As the headline says, I want to help you today to figure out the right questions to be asking your publisher. It goes without saying that a lot of these questions are best suited for people choosing the self-publishing option. So for those of you who might be traditionally published or consider looking for a traditional publisher, I don't think these questions are not important. So take a look through and see what feels important to you. Write them down, take them into that first meeting, because the bottom line is you don't want to be partnering with the wrong people. The publishing industry is filled with people happy to take your money and bad at giving good service. And these questions are designed to make you that much smarter. I want you to walk into that meeting and whip out these questions and get them to give you the answers you need, even if it's not the right answers. That's okay. I'd rather have you pass on an offer than to accept something because you feel like you had to. So, why should I be talking to you about this? Well, my name's Dave. My job is to sit with authors just like you and to advise you on your options. Should you publish? Where should you publish? What the best platforms might be to publish for you. I have these sorts of conversations a lot. So to date, I think we've helped more than 400 authors find their feet and get their books published. And so I have these conversations often. And I can imagine what you're feeling the first time you're chatting with a publisher, the mix of nerves, maybe a bit of intimidation. And these questions are going to help you, because if you're in that first meeting and you're feeling a little awkward and uncomfortable, you might forget what you came for. Now, if you have some of these written down, even better. So let's jump in, guys. The most important question I think you should be asking is almost an offensive one, really, but it makes a lot of sense. Now, can I trust you? How do I know I can trust you? Now, a good publisher should not feel offense at this question, because depending on the country you come from, we get scammed a lot. Now, I'm in South Africa, and I can tell you that South Africa has a very high rate of online scams, or just scams in general. And so what you find is authors are understandably hesitant to part with money before knowing exactly who they're working with. And I think an experienced business, especially a publishing business, should have answers prepared for that. I think if someone came to me and said, Dave, how do I know I can trust you to guide me from beginning to end of a publishing process? I could list a couple things, starting at the portfolio of people we've helped, looking through to the happy reviews we've gotten. So I make sure to collect a lot of feedback from authors that I help, specifically to answer this kind of question. I'm happy to put you in touch with an author if need be. I take a lot of effort on my website to make sure that it's up to date, it's friendly. I share a lot of free and helpful information just like this video. So these are small little things. There's not a right or wrong answer, but it's important that the publisher is able to allay your concerns. I think the wrong thing to happen here is if a publisher gets upset and says, well, take it or leave it. This is how it's going to be. I wouldn't want you partnering with someone like that. Now, it's important that you understand what your responsibilities are. It's silly to get into a publishing relationship where you're expecting the world. You're expecting your publisher to put the book together. You're expecting the publisher to then market the book across all social media platforms on a regular basis, to have events lined up for you. And I think that's the point that I'd like to get to you across today, possibly the most, aside from marketing, is don't expect someone else to put more effort into your book than you would. So have these expectations set that, yes, a good publisher will guide you through a process. However, don't expect that you can jump into the process and be hands-off. I think just to get that expectation set, it's not going to be a hands-off process. I find authors who are more involved, so authors who ask questions, who pop me messages or send me an email with a question they've thought about, I like that, because I know that you'll enjoy the process that much more. So don't be afraid to ask questions. I enjoy answering these questions, and I think any publisher should, or they should at least have documentation online where they can point you to answer the question if they might not know or they might be too busy. And aside from getting your hands dirty in your publishing process, expect that the marketing process will be no different. So marketing is something that too many authors get into the process expecting to be handled by someone else. Unfortunately, a lot of publishers, especially the naughtier publishers, will make a promise of, we're going to make you famous. We're going to get you up and out and everywhere. And the authors Sometimes are lied to, sometimes they're misled. When it comes to marketing, it's easy to use a lot of impressive sounding terms like, engagements and social media likes and things like that, where in essence, none of it matters. After a short space of time, often the authors are left to market the book on their own. And that takes us through to our third point, which is the marketing of the book included in your cost? I specifically, for example, won't. I quote anything marketing separate because the risk of putting inflated and impressive sounding terms on paper and charging you for it, it's there. A lot of publishers will put down a marketing campaign with no detail, or the vaguest of details, again, using things like social media to make you think things are happening, but they're not. And so ideally have this conversation up front. Find out if there's any kind of marketing plans. And if possible, I want you to get it down to a granular level. I want you to ask the publisher, what does this mean? So what does social media mean? This engagement, what does that mean? What platforms are you going to focus on? Do I need to do anything? Do I need to have a social media page, for example? So ask these questions and expect that marketing will be left largely in your hands. And any chats around marketing, try get the person you're speaking with to speak your language, to slow it down, to clarify. Don't feel pressured. A lot of these companies do rely on high pressure tactics to get you to buy. And I want you to know it's okay to slow a conversation down and say, hold on, I didn't get that last bit. What is book talk? Can you explain that to me? Another misconception is editing. A lot of authors are given editing prices that are packaged as part of the price, and that's a little dangerous because how can someone quote you on editing if they haven't seen what you have? So some editors or some companies will quote you a fixed price in South African rands. We would have a fixed cost, and they say, don't worry, editing's part of this. But the problem is, if they're quoting you an editing cost, which is normally a per word cost, meaning the more you've written, the more your editing price should be. And the poor editor on the other side now gets a flat rate. They don't get any more if your book's really long. They're editing your document, and they are now disincentivized to give you anything beyond the barest of service. So it's not a great business model. It makes the prices tempting. I get that. It's better, or I think an author likes seeing a sort of a price including editing, but it's a little dangerous because you risk getting a bad edit. The editor generally would get a flat fee. Your book might not get the level of edit that you want because obviously an edit is not equal to an edit. You get a light edit, you get a heavier edit, and you get a whole range of edits in between. Now, I've linked to an article that we've written on our post. I recommend you read it. That goes into a bit of detail as to the different levels of edit you might get. And understand that if your editing fee is packaged in with the publishing cost, there's a good chance you're getting the barest of edits. So, if possible, I want you to separate the edit from the process, or find a publisher who does that. And second, clarify what sort of edit am I getting out of this process? Am I getting a lighter edit? Are you going to go in depth? How many rounds of feedback do I get? Guys, ask these questions. It's good. I can promise you. A small question with a quick answer is normally, well, do I get printed books as part of this? So once my publishing process is done, will you print some books for me? What you'll see I've written is there's no right answer here. I know it's tempting, again, to see publishers or be swayed by a publisher who says, yes, we'll give you 5, 10, 20, 50 copies. Normally they have factored that into the price, and if your price is amazing and you're getting printed copies, there's a good chance that the level of quality you're getting might not be the best. So it's a common theme where the lower price you see might not always be the best price if quality means a lot to you. So yes, ask, by all means ask, do I get printed books out this process? But there's no right or wrong answer when it comes to that. So to be honest, the next question is one of the downfalls of going the self-publishing route. And very simply, it's where an author looks at me and says, can you get me into physical bookstores? Because the short answer is not easily. When you self-publish, and I'm speaking from a South African perspective, but I'm fairly sure that it's pretty similar around the rest of the world, and you can correct me if it's different in your country. But if you self-publish, you're excluded from a lot of mainstream book distribution, meaning it's harder to get your book inside bookstores. Bookstores generally want to deal with a book distribution network that generally wants to rather work with traditionally published books. So this is a one known downfall of books going through the self-publishing options or the self-publishing route, is that if you want your book in physical bookstores, often you're going to have to knock on a store-by-store basis and say, hello, would you please take my book? And you're going to have to negotiate that with a store buyer. Often you might be lucky enough to find the right person who can get you into several stores, but that's not a given. I do know of a few companies locally that you can pay to get the book distribution of a traditionally published book. So I would suggest Googling or asking around in your specific country or territory. But I do know of businesses that specialize in getting a self-published book into bookstores. The fine print here, guys, is don't expect magic. I know a lot of authors go for the bookstore thinking that this is it, I've made it, I'm going to make a lot of money, where it's often a little bit more of a vanity exercise, and I'm sure you know what that means. Essentially, your book is going to be there, people are going to see it, you can pick it up, you can take a photo, you can maybe have a book signing at the store, but the royalties are often pretty disappointing and quite far below what an online store could pay you. So a quick example is Amazon can pay an author up to 70% for the sale of an ebook, where a traditionally published book, going through the full, the book publisher getting their split, the book distributor getting their split, the bookstore getting their split, often leaves an author with 10, 15% in most cases. So just know that self-publishing makes it a little harder. There are companies that can help you get into bookstores once you have self-published. But just hold on to, just know that it doesn't always mean the riches you think it might. This one should be obvious, but it's not a bad question. Number 7 is, are your fees charged upfront? I know it's a fear of a lot of authors to get a bill that you didn't expect. And to be fair, this has happened to me several times where I was first starting out in the industry and I reached out to people to help me with the book process, only to be surprised by, fine print that they snuck in or an invoice that I wasn't told about. And so get clarity from the person that you want to work with or the company that you might want to work with and say, well, is this the only quote I'm going to see? And in what instances would I see a second quote? For example, if an author comes to me and says, I want, just that, please, just a cover, just a book. And then during a discussion, the author says, actually, you know what, I'd like a website, please, as well. Then yes, you will see a second quote. But ideally, you want to know about that. And you want to have clarity on what you're being quoted for and any costs that might pop up. Because obviously, stores like Amazon don't normally charge a yearly fee. So you can pay someone to help you get there, for example, like we offer our authors, but understand that there should be no yearly fee from a self-published company helping you. Where you are seeing yearly fees, generally it means you've gotten in partnership with a business that might not be a self-publishing or pure self-publishing company. Importantly, will you take money from my book sales? Number 8. So if you self-publish, the goal you should have is earning 100% of any sale of a book from Amazon. There's no reason to have anyone in between you taking your money from Amazon and sharing it. You should be getting the money paid fully to your account. If you're sharing money with anyone, it means that you're probably not being self-published. It might be a traditional contract or it might be a vanity press, which, guys, I really want you to avoid if possible. So find out if you're earning 100%, and if not, understand why. Again, either I want you aiming for the traditional publishing side or I want you going for the self-publishing side. Try avoid any business where you're paying money up front and you're sharing commission. That's not great. Ideally, you should be in control of the Amazon account and you should be earning 100% of what Amazon pays you. Next question, number 9, is, should I sign a contract or do I need to sign a contract? Now, the reasons I can think of most of the time where you sign a contract is, well, you're sharing your royalties with someone else. So whatever money you get paid, some comes to you and some goes to other people. That's one reason to sign a contract. Another reason is the files that are created in the typical book process. So if we design your cover, you get a print-ready PDF. If we design your interior, similar print-ready PDF. If we create an ebook, there's an EPUB ebook file that gets published. And often in a traditional process, these files belong to the publisher, not the author. However, if you are going the self-publishing route, why wouldn't you be able to own these files? And so we'll deal with this question a little later on, but that's the two reasons why a contract's normally in place. I know there will be other reasons. There might be an NDA for some authors, a non-disclosure agreement, but in general, contracts, they introduce red tape. Often the person getting you to sign has their best interests at heart. And so I argue and I say, what's the point of a contract? I don't get my authors to sign it because everything I create belongs to you, and all the money that gets paid out gets paid to you. So why should I get in the middle of that with some paperwork? This next one is number 10. And how would I make changes as an author to my book later on? This is tricky because I know as the author, you might be saying, well, I've got one change. I want to change one paragraph. I want to change one page. I want to add one chapter. And trust me, I've heard these before. The thing is, depending on the formats of books we've helped you create, so if we've helped you create just a print file, a paperback file, maybe we've helped you create an eBook file as well. Maybe we've then taken those paperback and eBook files and got them to Amazon for you. Now, when an author comes and says, just change this part for me, firstly, we need to understand what that part is. So there's a communication process of understanding exactly what must be changed with no shadow of a doubt. The second part is when it comes to layout and typesetting, you can understand that introducing a paragraph or two paragraphs pushes everything after that page ahead. What that means is a typesetter, a book designer, now has to go through each page after that to make sure that there's been no orphaned word or widowed, I forget the phrasing, it's orphaned or widowed, but there's no word appearing on a page on its own. And that makes more sense now, doesn't it? So any paragraph or any text you introduce, every page after that, we have to go through and make sure that it looks good, that the hyphenations are in place, that there's no stray words on their own. And so that's why adding one word can sometimes be a lot more work than you think. After that, we then have to get your approval. We have to get the eBook file created and the same approval process with the eBook file to make sure you're happy. Then we have to take both those files potentially and get them uploaded online. So you can see that a simple update from your side actually might take a few hours of work purely to make sure that the files look as they should, to make sure that the ebook is created, and then to make sure that the files are re-uploaded to a platform like Amazon. So ideally, to help avoid the costs and to help avoid the chances of getting these little updates after the fact and after you finish publishing, is have an editor look through your work. I know the cost can be prohibitive, and that's what self-publishing suffers from, is a lack of editing. But it means the chances of you finding mistakes later on obviously are less. And the other thing is to make sure before the book layout or typesetting gets started, be as comfortable as you are. This is it. No more changes. I'm happy. I've gone through it as many times as can be. The worst thing that can happen is an author jumps into the process and says, let's go, get started. And then partway through says, ooh, I found some mistakes. Well, actually now I want to get the manuscript edited right now, while it's going through layout. And we have that from time to time. So I've also linked to a really cool article, the best way to give your publishing team feedback on what changes should be made after the fact is actually commenting directly on your print-ready PDF. Again, I'm assuming it's not a lot of changes. So if this was 100 changes or 200 changes, you might need to go back to the original manuscript and actually make the changes there. However, if it's a few, go to your print-ready PDF, and I've linked to a really cool article that I put together on how to leave comments exactly in the right spot in a PDF document for your publishing team to find them. Number 11, understand what book format your publisher is making for you, because a publisher might be making just a paperback. The publisher might be making a paperback and an ebook, or just an ebook. And that dictates how the whole process goes. If I know that you want a paperback from the start, your cover process looks very different. Whereas if I know you just wanted an ebook, well, the cover is in just the front cover, right? And there's no back cover, and there's no ISBN barcode at the back. So deciding up front what format you need help with determines the process you go through. It helps decide your final bill as well, because obviously if we're helping you through an ebook and a physical book as well, there's more steps. The bill goes up, understandably. The combination that I've seen works for most people, and probably you watching this, is going to be getting a physical paperback and then a digital ebook design. So that combination, it seems to suit most authors, and if you're unsure, it probably will suit you. If, however, you were on a tight budget, going for the paperback first is normally a safe bet. So if you're on a tight budget, do the paperback and then go through to the ebook after that. The next question is ownership. There's a second question after this. This is the first question, number 12, on ownership. What do I own? And what I want you to get before your process is done is I want each of you to get your book files and save them your side. The situation I see so much is where an author pops up a year later or 2 years later and says, I need to make changes, or I want to use the book somewhere else, or I want to go to a different printer. Can you get me the book files? And after a couple of years, guys, you can't expect the publisher to still be there. You can't expect the publisher to still have the files. And so as you're going through the publishing process and your cover's finished and your interior's finished and your ebook's finished, I want you to actually hold those files and keep them with you. If a publisher says, we won't give these to you, again, you might be with a traditional publisher. I know that's the case for them. But if it's a self-publishing business where you're paying fees up front and they say, no, we won't give you these files, guys, that's a red flag. Understand there's a difference between the print-ready documents, which I think you should have, and the master files, the design files that we'll talk about next. So make sure that before you finish the publishing process and the final bill's paid, or you say goodbye to your publisher, make sure you get your cover, your book interior, your ebook, you save them somewhere where you won't forget them your side, because I can promise you, you will need them at some point. Now, this next question, number 13, is who owns your book master files? Now, I wasn't sure if I should put this in because it's a little technical possibly. And my friend and cover expert Greg Davies has a very good analogy for this. He says, well, if you pay someone to, if you're paying to get Microsoft installed in your computer, you walk into the shop, you pay for it, and you walk out with Microsoft on your computer, or you walk out with a disk. What you don't walk out with is the source code for the operating system. And that's the simplest analogy I can think of. So we've designed your cover, we've designed your interior, and you should own the end result. The end result being the cover, being the interior. However, it does not mean you own the design files we use to make it. And this is an industry norm. So it might leave a bit of taste, but most designers work this way. So if you're an author who says, I want to make potential updates often, maybe there's a lot of extra work going into this book. I want to design, take characters and put them on t-shirts, and I want to get a logo, and I want to write a second and third book. Maybe it makes sense for you to own these design files. Now, what I want you to expect is that these might be something that has to be quoted for. So don't expect the design files, and often these are Adobe design files. Most publishers work inside Adobe, meaning the book files will be Adobe InDesign, maybe the cover gets done in Adobe Photoshop. The output is the PDF. I want you to always have the PDF, but for some authors, maybe having those master design files, the Adobe Photoshop or the Adobe InDesign, could be of use. However, again, guys, expect that it's going to be quoted for separately. Number 14, don't worry, we're almost there. Number 14 is, what is print on demand and how can it help me? Now, print on demand means, picture the old way. Let's do it this way. Picture the old way. Now, you're selling a book from an online platform. You list the book, the paperback, the physical book for sale. And as the book sells, it runs out of stock. And at some point, you, the author, have to print a whole batch of new books and somehow get it to this platform, courier to them or ship it to them for them to start selling more. And the books aren't available, as soon as the quantities are sold until the stock gets refilled. Now, print on demand is the solution. So print on demand means that you give the platform, for example, there's Amazon that does print on demand well, and you give Amazon the cover and you give Amazon the interior files of your book. Amazon says to the world, guys, this book is for sale in a physical paperback form. And as an order comes through from a reader, Amazon will print and ship from those files. And what that means is the book never needs to be stocked. It means that Amazon will print one book at a time, or it'll print 10 books if there's an order for 10, or it'll print 100 if someone orders 100. So it's a system that means there's zero wastage, it's more efficient, and it means that as South Africans, for example, we can give Amazon our book print-ready PDF files. We can sit back knowing that our paperback book is fully stocked and will always be to sell around the world. Guys, it's a really good system, and I want you, if you can, to use it. There's no good reason why not to? Essentially, there's upfront costs where you pay someone to design the files in the spec that Amazon or the other platforms might want it. It then sells as many times as it can, meaning once your upfront costs are done, ideally this book is just earning income for you. Obviously, for local options, there is Takealot in South Africa. Takealot's not great for exposure. In other words, it doesn't have the foot traffic that Amazon does. However, Takealot does mean that a South African author can have a print-on-demand solution locally and avoids the big shipping costs from Amazon's print-on-demand option. Okay, now here's a contentious topic. So we're in South Africa, and I know we're not the only ones, where people have strong opinions about Amazon. Well, I don't like Amazon. They're bullies. I don't like monopolies. I will never get my book published on Amazon. Please don't be that person. If you're watching this, please don't take the high road on this one, because your book sales will suffer. Your readers will not find you because you're cutting out one of the market's biggest bookshops. So every author watching this, I want you to have your book on Amazon, please. So find out the person that you want to work with, the publisher that you want to work with, that this is indeed part of their process. Obviously, ideally the ebook followed by the paperback book should go to Amazon. What that means is you have global reach. So it means that from a smaller country outside the first world, as we are here in South Africa, we get global access with ebooks being sold globally. We get global access with our paperbacks reaching readers. So it is kind of a win-win. I want you, if at all possible, to have your book on Amazon. Is Amazon the only option? No, it's not. No, there are instances where Amazon maybe won't accept a certain kind of book in a certain language. There are instances where their royalty rates might not be good or good enough for you. There are other shops, and there is a platform that I usually use to get to these other shops called draft2digital.com. So draft, the number 2 digital, guys, it'll be linked in the article, so I advise you to go to the article as well. And that's the alternative that you can either use at the same time in parallel as Amazon, or if Amazon does not work for you because the royalty structure is not great or your language is not accepted, Draft2Digital will generally be the backup plan. Getting to the end, I want to make sure if you do go to Amazon that you control the email address that you're listed with. I had a chat with an author recently where the publisher had listed them, but the publisher had created an account to list the book with an email address that the publisher owned, not the author. Now, years down the line, the author says, I don't know how my book's doing. Has it sold? I don't know. Is it still listed? I don't know. And so without the email address to log into your account and find through the sales reports how the sales might be going, you're held hostage by the publisher technically. So make sure that if your book goes to Amazon, it's using an email address that belongs to you. And the reason is simple, is that you want to be able to log in and check your sales. And you never want anyone to have the ability to lock you out your account, because just now you and a publisher have a fight or a disagreement. Now they're using, their email address with Amazon, and they can just disable it. They can just, disable the entire account, and you're left high and dry as the author. So try retain control of the Amazon account for the sales reports, but also the longevity of your writing on Amazon. Finally, question 17. It's important that you understand what royalty rates you're going to be earning. Amazon, as I mentioned, tends to pay an author either 35 or 70%. Now, you do get the choice. Obviously, you're going to want to choose 70%. That, however, comes with T's and C's, with fine print. So some of the fine print as well will pay you 70% author, but you have to keep the book's price between $2.99 and $9.99. Some of the other fine print as well, okay, we'll pay you 70%, but then we're going to levy a surcharge of 15 US cents per megabyte of file size. So if you have an ebook with a lot of pictures, your file size will be bigger, and it means if you've selected the 70% option, you're going to get a delivery surcharge times by the megabyte, the amount of megabytes in your ebook size. So generally you want to make sure your ebook is as optimized and efficient as possible, so it doesn't have the big file size. The other bit which hurts a lot coming from Africa and South Africa is that if the reader who buys your book lives in there's no nice way to put it. Amazon has a 70% list, and only the countries on the 70% list will pay the 70% option. So you can say, Amazon, I'm selling my ebook. I would like 70%, please. Amazon says, no problem. If a reader lives outside of generally the first world, for example, South Africa, and buys your book, Amazon says you only will ever earn 35%. So you've uploaded your ebook correctly. You've selected 70%. But if your reader doesn't live in the US, Europe, UK, they live maybe in South Africa, South America, for example, then Amazon says, sorry, only 35%. It's a topic for another discussion. I hate it. It gives authors from countries like South Africa, it gives us another barrier. But it is what it is. So guys, thank you. I know the video ran a little longer. I hope it was valuable. If you enjoyed the video, I would love to hear from you in the comments. Until the next time, this is Dave. Speak soon.